Good day, folks. In this episode, we would take a look at the installation of the Solaris 11 operating system in a VirtualBox environment. Most of you might be aware, a VirtualBox is a virtualization solution that's freely available for download from virtualbox.org. The binaries of the VirtualBox is available for most of the operating systems that are available in the market. Before we go ahead with the installation procedure of the Solaris 11 operating system, it's important that we go and take a look at the Oracle website to understand the different types of Solaris binaries that exist for download. I have the download location of Solaris OS on my screen. You could go to oracle.com and navigate to Solaris operating system download location from the home page. As you can see on the screen, there are three different types of images that are available. One that is tagged as text installer, another one that's tagged as live media, and a third type that talks of automated install boot image. In plain language, if your intention is to run Solaris 11 operating system in a desktop or a laptop with, of course, a nice looking GUI on top of it, then your choice might be the live media binary. You could also observe there that this ISO image is only available for the x86 platforms. Of course, it's unusual for us to have a laptop or a desktop that runs on the Spark processor. The other type of installer that exists is a text installer, and it's available for both Spark and x86, and that's an image you would end up using in data centers to install Solaris on servers. Very rarely would you be getting into a Solaris box using its GUI. Access to Solaris box is normally using SSH or other remote connectivity utilities. So obviously you're not so keen to have a UI running on Solaris OS if your Solaris is running on a server in the data center. So the choice of binary at that point in time would be text installer. Lastly, the automated installer is an ISO image that you would use for a hands-free installation of the Solaris OS. When you are talking of a massive installation, when there are a large number of servers to be installed with this OS, obviously going around each of the machine with a DVD image is certainly not going to be a optimal way of doing it. You should have a server that would automatically push the image and help the clients download the required packages from a server. That's what you do in automated install, AI install of Solaris 11. So if your idea is to set up an AI server for hands-free installation of the Solaris 11 operating system in your clients, then the ISO image that you should be using is the automated install ISO image. In this specific segment, we will be looking at the installation of the live media of Solaris. Now, the peculiarity of the live media installation of the Solaris is that you can actually boot to the media, get an operating environment to work with, and later choose to install the operating system. And hence the name live media there. You get a boot environment from the OS itself, from the CD itself, the DVD image. From there, if you're interested, you can double click on a specific icon and perform the installation of the Solaris 11. So this specific episode is about installation of the Solaris 11 using the live media. So let's go ahead and get started with that. This is my VirtualBox interface. You can see that there are a couple of virtual machines already running on it. Doesn't matter. We will not be paying attention to any of that. We will not be using any of those virtual machines that already exist. Now, to create a new virtual machine, it's self-explanatory. You can see that here. It's new, and then I need to specify what is the type of the operating system that I plan to install on this virtual machine. Solaris 11, 64-bit. It's important that we use a 64-bit host operating system to run the VirtualBox and eventually Solaris on top of the VirtualBox there. In my system, Ubuntu happens to be the host operating system, and the VirtualBox that you see there is running on top of Ubuntu. We should give the virtual machine a name, so let's give the name My S11 Desktop. Like any other machine, you are expected to specify the resources. How much of RAM would you like to allocate for this virtual machine? To be on the safe side, let's keep it as 2 GB of RAM. How much hard disk space and what type of hard disk do you want is what you answer on this screen and the 2 subsequent screens. So you could see that I want to use a virtual disk image or the VDI format, and then I specify let that storage be dynamically allocated. 16 GB of hard disk size should be sufficient, at least for our purpose, because I do not have a plan to install packages on this machine, or I do not want to set up a package repository on the desktop that I'm building here. So 16 GB should suffice for us. And there you go. You have a virtual machine, which of course doesn't have an operating system inside it. It's an empty virtual machine. Obviously, in the interest of time, I have the ISO images of the Solaris 11 already downloaded and kept inside my host machine. So I could go ahead and start this virtual machine and point to that ISO image to get started with the installation. But before I do that, I want to show you a couple of settings here for this virtual machine. One, of course, is the network. As you can see from this window, VirtualBox from this UI lets you assign a maximum of 4 network interfaces to this virtual machine. In our scenario, I haven't enabled the second and the third and the fourth adapter. I have only enabled the first adapter, and that too I have used NAT, which is network address translation. Because I'm using NAT, an IP address is going to be automatically assigned once this virtual machine comes up, and the virtual machine would be able to connect to the outside world. But if you are in a situation where you want to have multiple virtual machines inside a VirtualBox that can talk to each other, probably a better option would be internal network. In the later examples that we would be running through in the series, we would use internal network but for now we will go with the default one, which is NAT, network address translation. The other section that is important to us is boot order. When the virtual machine is started, what is the order in which it will search for the boot image? We no longer need floppy, so we'll remove that. We don't want this virtual machine to search the floppy disk for boot image. We have optical and hard disk, and the order matters, of course. First, it'll look at the boot image in the optical drive, that is the DVD. If it doesn't find, then it goes to hard disk. Probably a better option would be to put hard disk first and optical drive next. Now, why? Because you start the virtual machine, it doesn't find the OS image in the hard disk, it will try to find it from the DVD. Once the installation is through, when the system reboots, you don't want the system to keep rebooting onto the optical drive. So once the system reboots after the installation, it's going to find the OS image on the hard disk and it'll pick up from the hard disk and start booting. So this order probably is our preferred order, at least in this scenario. There are many other useful sections in here, which in course of time we probably would be looking at, but one last section which we might touch on is the shared folders. I already told you that I'm running a Ubuntu operating system as the host operating system for my VirtualBox. If there are directories in the host operating system that I would like to share with my virtual machine, I could do that by going here and specifying those details. For now, I don't have anything to share, so I say OK and I'm done. It's time to start. When we start this virtual machine, it'll ask you, this is of course a screen that you get to see only the first time when you start the virtual machine. If I cancel it and start it all over again, it'll try to boot from the DVD. which of course is empty at this stage. I have the ISO image downloaded and kept inside my host machine. As you can see, there are 3 different types of ISO image here. From the name, probably it is very clear to you that one is meant for the automated install. A second one is a text install, which doesn't give you a UI. And the third is live DVD, which is what we are interested in. So I'm choosing the live DVD and say open. Let's start the installation. Now, mind you, we already mentioned that when you boot from the live media, you're actually booting into the operating system and you get a full-fledged operating environment to work on before installation. And then if you like the environment, you could double click on the icon that says install and go through the installation procedure. So let's start the operating platform here. It says, there are many options that you get to see here. I think I would go with the default option of booting into the operating system. Maybe I'll go with the default value of 27 and probably 3 is okay for me. Again, I have to remind you that since this is a live media, I'm actually going to get into the operating system and then I can work on the operating system if I want, or I can choose to install the OS. Even though it gives me a console login screen, I'm going to be patient here and would wait for a GUI login screen to show up. Or it could take me directly into the operating system. So we have now got the desktop, Solaris 11.3 desktop. If you're interested, you could go ahead and run some commands on the terminal here. The default username that is used by the live media, as you can see, is Jack from the prompt. Maybe if you want, you could just go ahead and say cat etc release to find out the exact release of the operating system that is in use here. So all of that is fine. We are not interested to work on a DVD copy of the OS. So let's go ahead and install Solaris operating system from the live media. Now that's straightforward. I double click on that icon. It's going to take me through a wizard that will help me go through the installation procedure of the Solaris 11.3. All of these are self-explanatory. I go to the next screen here. As you can see, there is an option of choosing an iSCSI for installing the OS, but in our case, we're going to rely on the local disk, the 16 GB virtual disk that we created in our VirtualBox. That's the 16 GB hard disk I was referring to. I would say use the whole disk and go to the next screen. It gives me an easy option to select the time zone here, and I'm sure anyone who is familiar with the installation procedure in flavors of Linux would also be familiar with these screens, because by and large most of these operating platforms give you the same set of wizard for performing the installation. So I'm done with the time zone as well. I will give my real name here, I'll give my login name here, and I'll give a password. Let's say I'll give a password. Now mind you, it's the same password that's going to be used by the root user as well. On this screen you don't get to see any information prompted for the root user of this operating system, because it's expected that when you're installing this on a desktop environment, you're not going to use the root user, because that's mostly for administrative purpose you would use. So there is a user by the name Rajesh R has a password, and the same password is the root user's password as well. So there is no separate password that's being prompted for the root user here. I say next. It's asking me, do you want to configure for the support? I think I'm going to skip this for the time being. So I say next, and it starts the installation. Okay, so because I didn't want you to stare at a progress bar for such a long time, obviously I've edited the installation procedure for brevity. So the installation is through. We have now managed to get a live media of Solaris 11 installed as a virtual machine, now VirtualBox. Obviously the next step is to reboot. And you would remember from the boot order that we specified in the virtual machine, since it now has an operating system in the hard disk, it's going to boot from the hard disk and not from the DVD. So let's wait for the system to come up from the hard disk now. As you can see, this is booting from the hard disk, and we would straight away get into it. We have created a user in that. We're going to log into the system using that user credentials and probably run a couple of commands, basic commands, to get to know the system. So we have the login screen for the Solaris 11 OS. Let's log in using the user we created during the installation. Let's go ahead and open a terminal to get some basic details about this system. Maybe we could increase the size of the font a bit. Let's find out the IP address of this machine. We mentioned earlier that because we are using network address translation, the IP address is going to be assigned automatically and the system would be able to connect to the outside world. You could find out the host name of this machine by typing the command hostname. We could also get to see the release of the operating system by running the command etc release, and as you can see, this is Solaris 11.3 that we are running. So I hope the installation of the live media Solaris 11 was pretty straightforward. I hope you would make use of the opportunity to download this ISO image from Oracle website and have a standalone installation of this operating system on your local machine so that you can play around with this. In the coming episodes, we would try to make use of the text ISO image and perform a text-based installation of the Solaris 11. And we'll also look at some of the features that exist in Solaris 11. Thank you so much for watching this video.